Okay, can you see my
Yes.
slides? Yes, cool. So, what and was pressing key. To be honest, I didn't care.
Хайд, да, там было хайд.
Спасибо.
Not that.
Um,
It's different.
понятно.
Okay.
Okay, so today we'll discuss decision making. I hope my microphone is not muted. That's all right. I don't know if it is, people will tell me. So decision making, horrible, big, wide topic, and we will try to make sense from this. Yeah. I tried to, how to say, make sense from all information that I found and also classify it somehow to group it some logical blocks. And the main accent will be done as usual on behavioral research, not on brain areas, but I will touch brain areas a little bit, and then I will give you a bunch of references. So if you're interested in brain areas and how they interplay, you can dive deeper, because otherwise I would not cover everything because there are many. So we are making decisions every day, and probably all of you familiar with this kind of task that you should or should not make a choice and let it be. And also, for example, this is also daily decision. What would you pick, cookie or this beautiful shake? But I would pick this. um, so I'm laughing. It's not really flowy, I know.
It's your subjective perspective on decision making.
Yes, it's how decisions are working.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we are already familiar with the reflex, right? We have our sensors, and they project to brainstem or spinal cord, and then we have motor output. And it could be super short loop or a loop with some interneurons, but anyway, it does not require our cognitive processing. Sometimes you can control some reflexes, but in general, like generally speaking, it's not possible. So reflex is reflex. But if we have some sensation and it's going to higher areas, we have kind of black box where we process this information, and then we can or cannot perform an action. So it's like maybe we should decide on it. We should wait possible outcomes and think about this. So it's not a reflex in this case, it's voluntary action. Maybe some people would argue with me if there is a free will or not, but it's not about this. It's just about how we can distinguish reflex from voluntary action. Yeah. And higher order cognitive processes link sensory input to motor output via decision making, right? That's what I highlighted here. And decision making implies some kind of flexibility. And there are two types of flexibility. First one is contingency. And it's like kind of uncommon word to use. It means that a stimulus might motivate a particular behavior, but the action may be delayed pending additional information or may never occur. And then I dived into this term, like, and contingency in general reference to relationship between two events, where one event depends on occurrence of the other. But then a logical question, like, what's the difference between contingency and causation? And it's actually a bit different, maybe like very different. In causality, you have a connection and it's deterministic. So if something, if A happen, B for sure will happen. But in a contingency, it's conditional and probabilistic. So it might happen, so it influences the outcome, but it's not like necessary for outcome to happen. And another type of flexibility, it's freedom from immediacy of action. So if in a reflex we react immediately after that loop is completed, so in decision-making process, when you have action outcome, you can postpone it. You can decide on something and then hold it, consider, and then act whenever you think it's appropriate. And in general, when I was searching through papers in decision-making, you can separate decision-making area in 4 main groups. Maybe some people can separate it on more, but I think 4 main groups, it's kind of enough. So first one, it's a perceptual decision-making. It's the earliest area in this kind of bunch of research. It's when we try to interpret sensory information, and sensory information is usually noisy. And then we accumulate some evidence about some sensory information. And then depending on that, we act. And I will tell you more about this, but in this example, you try to say whether frequency 2 is higher than frequency 1. In this case, in this example, it's not the case. So you push, for example, right button. And then if this frequency is higher than reference frequency, you push a left button. So it seems to be easier when frequencies are so different, but when they differ a little bit, it's not so obvious. And because we have noise in the system, it's not so easy to decide which one and then perform an action. Another one is more kind of straightforward for thinking about decision-making. It's value-based decision-making. When you assign to some outcomes different values. For example, I like apples more than oranges. That's why I take orange. So you make a decision based on your values. Risk-based decision-making. It's connected somehow to gambling and whether you're ready to risk in order to get a higher reward, but also you can lose. Yeah, we'll discuss that a little bit, and it's funny that these approaches also developed for rodents, so rodents can gamble. And the last one, it's a social decision-making and a game theory. It involves interactions between conspecifics and, this prisoner's dilemma when you can cooperate or defect. And if you decide to cooperate, to basically confess, say like, yeah, I made this crime. So you have for 1 year or in prison, and then there are different, outcomes, whether one decide to confess or say like, no, I did nothing. Yeah. So we'll start with perceptual decision-making because it's the basics of decision-making research. And I will start with some old studies and then try to go through these all areas a little bit. So perceptual decision-making, as I told before, it deals with evaluation of sensory information. Like everybody can imagine that when we look in the darkness, we cannot really understand what it is, right? We have some noise in the system, and like if you, after watching some horror, lie down in a bed and it's dark and you're like, oh, I think there is something in the corner. So, but it's not true, right? And then you collect a bit more information and you look closer, like, no, there is something. And then you can decide, like, what is this? Should I be scared? And it's indeed some maniac in my room, or maybe it's something like just hallucination. So yeah, some noise in my visual system, right? So, and how it works, as I said, environment and sensory systems are noisy. And that's why physical stimuli are often ambiguous, and interpretation of sensory information requires judgment under uncertainty. So we are not certain. And the theory that was developed that with sequential sampling, we accumulate this certainty and then we made a decision. So we sample, look again and again, and then like, yeah, it seems like there is nothing wrong here, but actually I think there is. Oh, somebody else. Yeah. Yeah. So in monkeys, it was studied in somatosensory discrimination task, touch and go. So basically how it works, I partially told you already. So we have reference frequency, and it's like 20 hertz, and it's applied to the finger. So it's like vibration. And then after a certain delay, another comparison vibration is applied to the same finger, and it could be with higher frequency or with lower frequency. It depending whether it was higher and low or lower frequency, primate should press a button left or right. And the finding was, so it basically, for me, just sensory discrimination, right? If frequencies are different enough, decision is more or less obvious. But if it's around like 20 as a reference frequency, it's really difficult to distinguish, to differentiate it with comparison frequency, whether it's a bit higher or lower. So the more the difference, the easier for us to decide, because when two frequencies are close to each other, all that noise makes a decision more difficult. Yeah. Then,
Sorry, if in this case, so there's also one thing that's called delay. So here it's not only like discrimination between frequencies, but it was also a delay. So it's a bit of a working memory thing,
yes,
right?
it's true. And
So-
all decision making have all working memory, more or less, because
Which you don't have to, like you, so well, at least I know experiments that we are doing, so there's no delay. So you can just like discriminate between them right away. So one goes after another, or one goes within the other, so like they overlay. Here, like, is it crucial to have a delay in this experiment? I think it's not really important, I mean, for that, right? So it's just
it's not really important.
you give a reference and then you give a...
You know why? Because we will see other experiments in rodents, and sometimes two frequencies of something displayed in the same time. So you don't have even like some time between.
Yeah.
But you can also play around with this, but it depends on your question. I actually tried to check in the paper how long was delay and whether it makes sense. But what I found, like few seconds. So I didn't find, maybe the paper was too old. No, actually not so old. But yeah, and it's also a super canonical example. It's also in study books, and in study books it also was written like some delay, several seconds. But it was not highlighted why they had that delay. Maybe, yeah. So I cannot say for sure what it is. And then the same logic, but with the visual system. So it's a visual discrimination task, and the monkey have to fixate in the center, and then this random dot kinetogram appears. And how it works, some dots are moving towards the goal, like goal, let's imagine this dot, right? And monkey does not have this dot yet, but it's just this kinetogram representation. And some dots are moving to the right, and some dots are moving to random directions. And every 40 milliseconds, this image kind of rebuilt, and another subset of dots moving to the right, and some other dots, remaining dots, are moving to random directions. And depending on percentage of the dots that moving towards the goal, we can manipulate by difficulty of the task, because obviously when you have more than 50% of dots moving towards the goal direction, it's easier to say that, yeah, the general trend is going to the right. But when it's less than 50%, how it's really, really difficult to say that. And then monkey should perform an action by eyes. It's actually interesting. I was watching some decision-making video, like lecture from NYU, and the person was studying these type of tasks on monkeys with visual response. And his argument for that was that when you use other action outcome, like grabbing something or like, I don't know, perform any action, you kind of involve also action planning in a motor system, right? And then when you want to figure out the activity in a cortex, blah, 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 it contaminates your data somehow. And if you have visual task and you have visual response, in general, you kind of restrict your activity areas somehow. And that's why it's easier to make sense from neuronal data. I didn't dive deeper into that, but I just get the point why sometimes they ask monkey to answer by eye, because, you know, the visual system, how outcomes also goes to all that nerves and stem. I think superior colliculus, right? Something there is moving gaze. Yeah, so that's why sometimes people use eye movement instead of like some, I don't know, grabbing or something like that. Yeah, and here we have the same, right, outcome that the easier the task, the less the noise, the better monkey perform. So, but what's about rodents? Like monkey, they're smart. Rodents are also smart. So here it's an example on the auditory discrimination task with the pulse on clicks. I will just go through the trial step by step. So first, a central LED signal start to like flash, and it indicates that mouse should enter. Rat, actually, right? Animal should enter. And then rat have to perform a nose poke in order to like listen to sound. And it has two sound sources on the left, on the right, and they differs by frequency of these clicks. And then at the end, mouse should go to the left or to the right, depending on which side the number of clicks were higher. And this click representation time was variable as well, from 0.1 second to 1.2 seconds. So it's also, as I understood, it influences how long you can actually sample the information, sensory information, and get which side has more clicks or which side has less clicks. And remember that graph when you accumulate your evidence. So the more time you have to accumulate your evidence, the more sure you could be to perform, like to make a decision actually. Yeah. Yeah, I told already. And what they found? They recorded from two areas. I will briefly, I promise not to touch brain, but here it was the beginning of my preparation, so I had the power to touch a brain, then I didn't. So they recorded from parietal cortex and prefrontal cortex. And they found that in a parietal cortex was active during accumulation, evidence accumulation. So the dependence was more or less linear. So when rat was listening and trying to figure out where, in which side there are more clicks, parietal cortex was active during that period. And then this frontal orienting field, actually, I'm not sure where it is exactly, but they actually managed to record a lot of neurons with tetrode. So FOF area, it's encoded more categorical decisions. So you can see that this curve is more step-like. And it kind of indicates a decision at the end. So it's not consistently linearly firing an accumulated like evidence, but it kind of fires at the end and precedes a decision. And they also checked it with optogenetics and found that optogenetic silencing of FOF during different trials phases showed behavioral effects only when silenced at the end of the stimulus. So before kind of action. Yeah. And it supports the idea that FOF's role is committing to a categorical choice rather than participating in evidence accumulation.
So, and sorry for this on the plot B,
Mhm.
what is the accumulator value? Like, can you explain this a little bit?
I should remember.
What is this accumulator value?
I think it's accumulating of these kind of clicks,
It's basically time.
more or less.
Can it be like it's kind of correlated with time? Yeah. So the longer they hear,
Yeah,
the more they sure.
exactly. And if it's fractional change in firing rate, so it's I think it's a number of clicks or something like this, accumulated value, but it's basically over time. Yeah. And that's why they say that this is a linear dependence over time, but they just recalculated on accumulator value. I don't remember, I will not lie. What is it exactly? But it depends on the time. Yeah. And it's like this. Yeah.
Mhm.
And just they align it to zero somewhere, but I don't know where. I can double check after.
Mhm.
But you will see many plots like this, I think. So you can figure it out. And similar task was done by another group. And here, instead of sound, they presented light. And light was also flashing. And red had to go to the left or to the right, depending on which side light flashed more. And here they used the calcium imaging. That's why you can see this weird plate on the head. So rat had to come, insert a head on this window, initiate a trial, then like acquire that sensory information, and then decide where to go. So looks horrible. And collect a vote reward. And the structure of the trial was more or less similar with the previous one. So you have these light flashes on both sides. Sometimes they can coincide, sometimes not. And you should accumulate on which side you have more flashes and then perform an action. Yeah. We can discuss it in details, but I think it doesn't make real sense. You just should understand that it's basically the same idea, and but with another sensory input, visual in this case. And what they found, they basically found more or less the same thing. So since it's calcium imaging, they recorded from 3 areas. Again, this frontal part, parietal cortex, and also visual. It's a medial V2, I think, right? So they then calculated how many active neurons among all neurons were detected. And we can see that for frontal part and parietal, there is kind of enough. So they proceed with further analysis. I will not show all analysis from the paper because it's too much. But in general, they then conclude only on these 2 regions. And for visual, it was not so many neurons, so it's difficult to conclude. And here, what we can see, if you saw maybe before calcium imaging data, but in general, it's a time of this full trial. So I put it here so you could see where these 3 seconds came from. So if you sum all these times, it will be 3 seconds. So align, pres-Q, Q period, and then post-Q. And then what they found that frontal part, neurons in a frontal part mostly fire at the end of the trial. So as we saw before, like and the time preceding a decision or during the decision. Actually, let me double check. So where is the vote reward happens? It's a delay, post-Q, probably during post-Q, I think. Post-Q, blah, 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 is released from the head restraint. So I think during post-Q, choice and reward happens because after that it will be delay. And yeah, so it's, wait, yeah, we are here. So it's mostly close to post-Q and during reward collection. And for parietal cortex, the activity of neurons higher at the beginning and at the end, and a little bit in the middle. So it's a bit different from the previous study that we saw. But in general, this trend for frontal part stays the same, that they fire at the end of the trial, before, during the decision. Yeah. And neurons in parietal cortex tend to be active early in the trial, late in the trial. But what does it mean? What is interpretation? Difficult to say for me. Why not in the middle? But yeah, that's what they found. This is a modeling. I'm not sure that I can explain it well, but maybe you can help me, or then if you're interested, can double check it yourself. So basically here they built the classifiers and they used the neuronal data to predict the outcome, this upcoming choice. And then here somehow they predicted evidence. So number of right goals versus two left goals, left choices. This one I didn't really understand. I should tell you how to say. I should tell you directly. But in general, what they concluded that it was easier to predict upcoming choice from activity from frontal cortex, and evidence somehow they calculated it was easier to predict by activity in parietal cortex. So it's general. It confirms previous results that we saw before. How exactly it's calculated? Don't ask me today. Do you have questions to this part?
How exactly it's calculated?
No, you can check. I am citing, and if you're interested exactly in this paradigm, please. My goal is to show you behavioral paradigms. Yeah. Yeah, good. You can. So you suggest me to read?
No. I'm checking already. So like
Okay.
I'm there. You can check. I'm checking.
Well, next one is value-based decision-making part. And we will check paradigms in this in the subset of research. Again, we will start with monkeys because it's more straightforward. Monkeys. This exact paper also not totally clear for me, but the main idea I can deliver. So monkeys were trained to choose between two visual cues, one placed in a response field of a neuron under study, and the other one is outside of it. So before their task, they figure out, they recorded from particular brain area, right? And then they try to find a response field, basically receptive field of a particular neuron under the study. And then they placed one of these images in this receptive field and another one out of receptive field. But to understand this task, we can actually neglect this receptive field because to grasp the idea how value-based decision-making can be tested, it does not make much difference. It just complicates the explanation. So just forget about this receptive response field. So what's the idea? They had two monkeys and they had two sets of images. And monkey could either get a small, big reward or small and big punishment, penalty in this case. Penalty is a fixation when animal just restrained and receive nothing, and sometimes it's really annoying to wait until another trial starts. So small penalty, you wait a little bit, big penalty, you wait a long time. And with reward, either you get a little bit of water or like a massive amount of water. And then, of course, monkey at the beginning were naive and they had to learn which image correspond to what. But then once they grasped the idea, they could actually perform their action after decision by saccade in order to maximize the value, maximize the outcome. So, of course, if you presented like with two, for example, with A1 and A2, you will pick A2 because you want to maximize the reward. And then like comparing, you can always pick the best or the least harmful outcome. Yeah, this is with monkey. With what we can do with rodents, like how we can teach rodents to assign some value to something. there is a serial reversal task. At the beginning, I included all training procedure, but then I decided to skip it and put it at the end of all slides. But in general, in order to teach rodents to play around with such a task, you should actually put a lot of effort to teach the rodent. Especially in this case, they used mice, and mice are super stupid. So basically, the idea is that mice is coming to magazine. It's called magazine. This kind of no, it's called magazine. Maybe no, it's not Russian research. So mice coming to a magazine and light turn on. So it's initiate the trial, and then light turns off, and for 5 seconds is given to mouse to press one of the levers, A or B. And then following this choice, both levers are retracted, light again turned on, and 5 seconds is given to kind of collection of the reward. And then after that, after reward consumption, we have inter-trial intervals. And of course, at the beginning, mice don't know which lever give you more reward, but over time, they learn that if I press on the right, I will receive more reward. If I press on the left, I receive less reward. And then at some point, mice learn too much, and to prevent outcome insensitive behavior, researchers decided to implement reverse learning. And so when mice performed like correctly, in this case, they picked outcome with a bigger reward more than 8 times out of last 10, they switch the rule. And for example, if B gave more reward, then A would give more reward and B give less. And it's a nice paradigm. I also tried to implement it in my mice, but they didn't learn. In their case, they actually learn. So mice have this flexibility in learning, so they can quickly switch the rule and then pick A instead of B, and they did it all the time. And what's also interesting, they implemented costs. So if you want to have a big reward, you should pay. And how we can force mice to pay? They implemented 2 ways, whether increased motor responses or temporal delay. In case of increased motor responses, once mouse picked a correct big outcome, like they decide on B in order to get a lot of reward, this A lever retracted, and then mouse had to press the lever several times. So it mouse had to put more effort, like more motor effort, in order to get a reward. And another approach is a temporal delay. When a mouse picked a big reward, it had to wait. And over time, mice would learn, for example, okay, I can pick A quickly, or I can pick B, but should wait, but I will get a lot. So it's kind of more complicated, interesting task, whether can mice estimate costs and what they can do with that. So next one is a risk-based decision-making, gambling. Yeah, there is an interesting research group in Sainsbury Wellcome Center, and they position themselves as a risk-based decision-making group, but actually they didn't publish yet papers on this topic, so I just picked a picture from their website. And then what risk-based decision-making tasks we have? One, as usual, we start with humans because decision-making is more straightforward on humans and primates. In humans, the old well-known task is the lower gambling task. And what participants are asked to do, they ask to pick a deck, 1 out of 4 decks, and 2 decks have like a big value. So if you're lucky, you can get a lot of money, and other 2 decks have less reward, less money, can bring you less money. But from the other side, there is a probability certain one, depending on a deck, that you can get penalty. And penalty is different also for the decks. And the goal of the task, what they ask to do, to maximize your kind of outcome. So you should go slowly and steadily, or like try to gamble and get as much as possible, basically to play around with probability. And I checked different studies. Actually, these guys, they kind of were the first one who implemented this approach. And then people now are playing around with all this reward penalty, penalty probability. And the initial study, it was not these numbers, but in general, it's like, it doesn't matter. You can play around with that. And
because this is funny here, because it's like, do the people know the probabilities?
no, but they can.
They only
make
get
sense
it with the
with
statistics.
Yes. You should try. So then, can we make rodents gamble? We can. So it's basically the same approach, but with no spook, for example. And mice have to, they also learn after trying. And instead of money, they receive or tasty milkshake or food in different work that I cited here. They use different reward. It doesn't matter. Penalties usually the same. It's timeouts. So the rodent asked to wait for some time. If it's a big penalty, it should wait for a long time. And mouse is hungry. Mouse want to have a milk shake. So it's not pleasant. So mice also over time learn how to maximize their reward. Yeah. And the last topic that we touch today is social decision making and game theory. And again, it sounds like more about humans and primates, but there are some things that could be implemented in rodents as well. So this study is kind of interesting. I actually was in that lab. I was not working there, but I was interviewed for internship, but I decided not to go. So it's in a Göttingen, in primate center. So what they did, they used humans and primates to play a game. And what they have to do, they have to coordinate or compete. And they should push the button. And usually one guy should push the button, and you can push the same or push the opposite. And who is pushing first is not assigned. It's usually who will do it faster. So there is no rule that first you, second me, then blah, blah, blah. And also for two agents, different buttons bring different reward. So for monkey, it's orange juice. Monkey apparently really like orange juice. And for people, it's money. Because like who will do it for orange juice? I don't know. I would not. And then, yeah. So let's go through this. Agent A, you can, let's say that this woman is agent A. You can you can pick red, so this button, or blue, this button. And then it brings you different reward. And for monkey as well. And so the best way to maximize an outcome is to coordinate. So like first time I'm picking blue and monkey picking blue, then I'm picking red and monkey picking red. And then at some point you get a bit more, monkey a bit less. Then next time you get a bit less, monkey a bit more. And in this case, it's kind of alternating. And you both kind of, it's payoffs for both of you. And yeah, it's a trial structure, basically what I explained. And what they found that in humans, over time, they get a rule, because at the beginning they don't know the rule. It just they get some money and they're just like, if I do like this, what will be? If I do like this, will be. So no monkey, no humans have an idea of the task, but after they can learn during the game. And you can see that humans, they learn to alternate. But macaque, they prefer they converge to simple static coordination. And actually, I remember Igor, the guy who performed this experiment, he said me that it also depends on the dominance of monkeys because they live there in a big area where they all know each other more or less. And more dominant monkey kind of performs everything faster, and subordinate monkey is like, yeah, okay, well, and it's yeah, it's like this. But then what they found that when you place monkey with a human, and human can show the monkey that, hey, like, come on, we can cooperate. And over time, monkey learn to cooperate. And when you place that monkey with another monkey who played with another human to also to learn to cooperate, the monkey can cooperate. So they kind of can learn from observation, and then two monkeys can cooperate when they learn to cooperate with humans. Yeah. Then rodents. These two-choice social decision-making task. So basically, what's happening here? And the results are quite weird, I will tell you for sure, but what? We have a recipient, rodent, and actor. An actor can no spoke left or right, and they both are mildly food deprived. It's like they said mildly. Okay, so the recipient was a passive player with a chance to receive a food reward from a magazine depending on the actor choice. So this guy can just wait for, I don't know, for fortune. And the actor was presented with a two-choice decision-making paradigm in which no spoken resulted in either food rewards for themselves only, selfish choice, or for both. But in this case, there is no cost for actor. So in both cases, he or she could get a reward. But the choice was only give the same reward to recipient or not. And what they found that actually altruistic responses were more common in mice than selfish responses. But when they perform a control, which is weird for me, when kind of there is no difference between, actually it maybe makes sense, right? So there is no difference. Yeah, it makes sense now. Because at the beginning when I read through it, it didn't make sense. Now it makes. So it doesn't matter which no spoke hole you prefer. You in any case get a reward, and in this case there is no difference. It's not significant. So both no spoke holes have the same outcome. So mice did not care. That's why we have non-significant here. So we can see that actually mice can be altruistic and